दोस्तों इस क्लास में आपको डिक्टेशन दूंगा मैं 100 WPM पर एसएससी और DSSSB के लिए जो स्पेशल मैटर मैंने तैयार किए हैं उसकी आपको डिक्टेशन प्रोवाइड कर रहा हूं 100 WPM पर। बी रेडी फॉर इट। I am laying stress on this particular point even though it might appear theoretical to cover a number of criticisms against this constitution. I would also like honorable members to note these points merely because that would answer partly the charge that the constitution is very long. Many honorable members have said that we should have copied the American Constitution. Some very worthy leaders outside who have the reputation of being students of constitutional law occupying high positions have stated that we should have copied the American Constitution and that this long constitutional document is worthless, or that we should have had a constitution outlining only a few general provisions which would have allowed for growth. But I would ask those gentlemen outside and honorable members here just to look at the decisions that are today an integral part of the American Constitution, and they will then find that to understand the American Constitution, it will be necessary to take into account not only the bare text but also the decisions of the Supreme Court over these 150 years. From 1862 onwards, the powers of the national government have been steadily augmented by various devices. For subsequent judicial pronouncements have said there are inherent and express powers assigned to the national government. Then again, judicial decision have granted powers to the national government because they were necessary for the exercise of the main functions of the government. Again, the federal legislatures have enlarged their scope because they were incidental and necessary for their function. Sometimes some of these powers have been called resulting powers mainly because of the action of the exercise of the powers that have been enumerated. The treaty making power of the national government that finds mention in the American Constitution has been considerably enlarged. In fact, sometimes the center has made inroads into the provincial power as a result of this power. The legislative power for the grant of judicial power has also made inroads into the state power, but not the least of them all are the three powers which have had a wide implication. One was the general welfare power, which finds mention in the preamble and in Article 1, Section 8, then the Commerce Clause and the taxing power. In fact, my honorable friend Mr. Iyer had made mention of these in his speech. Again, the taxing power has been further stretched by using the appropriate spending power of the center, so that in America today there is a central federal public health service. There are various other bureaus which administer directly their own departments in the various states. I have gone into these details merely to tell the honorable members of this house that if we should frame a constitution on the American model, we should perhaps have gone into greater detail than what we have done, and we should perhaps have given the center greater powers than we have given in this constitution. Sir, it is rather difficult to say what the present position of federalism is insofar as the American Constitution is concerned. But in the latest book on the American Constitution, practically in its closing paragraphs, it says that if people want to understand the American Constitution, let them look at the position of the President. The significant increase in the powers and the status of the President has been the greatest charge in the federal system in America. He thinks that the classic theory of federalism would become obsolete in its historic form before long. Are we, sir, in framing our Constitution merely to take only those features that are obsolete, only those features which have only historical value in the American Constitution, and really leave the operative portion of that Constitution in order to please the aesthetic susceptibilities of certain honorable gentlemen here or elsewhere who feel that we should have a Constitution that would be short like a prayer book, capable of being put in the lady's handbag and taken along wherever one wanted. A Constitution should give the average man an idea as to what it really means. He should not be left in such a position as to make him dependent on judicial decisions and the advice of expert lawyers to expound it to him. I would, in this connection, deal with a point raised regarding the vesting of the residuary powers. I think more than one honorable member mentioned that the fact that the residuary power is vested in the center in our Constitution makes it a unitary Constitution. It was, I think, further emphasized by my honorable friend Mr. Gupte in the course of his speech. I am taking my friend Mr. Gupte quite seriously because he appears to be a careful student who has called out this particular point from some textbook on federalism. I would like to tell honorable members that it is not a very important matter in assessing whether a particular constitution is based on a federal system from the point of view whether the residuary power is vested in the states or in the central government. But even at the risk of going into some detail, I would like to mention that it is the German political philosophers who evolved the peculiar theory called the competence. This theory is whether the national government or the state is allowed to appropriate competences which have been formally left to one or the other or had come into being at a later date. Only when the state is left with this competence, such a constitution would be a federation. In actual practice, such states had never come into being. If so happens that a component state has to concede the power categorically to the central government, it would not be a federation. It would be a confederation. It has been pointed out that definitions attaching such conditions are futile for the reason that the change sought to be made can be achieved by the amending power. Stop. दोस्तों इसी के साथ ये डिक्टेशन फिनिश होती है। उम्मीद है आप लोगों ने बहुत अच्छे से लिखा होगा, काफ़ी अच्छे वर्ड्स इसमें हैं। 80 WPM पर डिक्टेशन में पहले ही प्रोवाइड कर चुका हूँ इस मैटर की। अगर आपको इस मैटर को लिखने में कोई दिक्कत हुई है तो आप 80 WPM को भी लिखिए, जिससे कि आपके वर्ड्स जो इसमें नहीं बन पाए हैं उनको आप पकड़ सकें, अच्छे से प्रैक्टिस कर सकें, उसके बाद आप 100 पे इसे लिख सकते हैं। आपसे मुलाकात करता हूँ अगली क्लास में अगली ट्रांसक्रिप्शन के साथ। तब तक के लिए बाय बाय, टेक केयर।